Hey, we're live from 304 Studios in Jonesboro, Arkansas. This is an STSPod Club production. I'm BT, and over there is my best friend of all time, Gene Jackson. How the hell are you, Gene?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good, BT, which, I mean, that's a lie and you know it, but what else am
We
I going to
got to
say?
smile to keep from crying, Gene. Cry
Absolutely.
only on the Patreon, okay? So if you want to subscribe, you can subscribe to mine or Gene's and hear us crying. So there you go.
Yeah.
Uh, this episode is something we do every year. Try to do it every year. Apparently, we've only done it 7 times in the last 9 years. Well, this is the seventh time in the last 9 years. We skipped a few years here and there. You're the third person to join me in doing Observing the Observer. The very first year, it was Matt Farmer, an historian, well known, Defy Wrestling. He does Defy Wrestling. Um, Lance did a couple shows with me, and now you. And it looks like we have done one the last 4 years, so we've been real consistent with it. I almost skipped it this year, but when I was looking at stats, the most listened audio episode of STSPod Club in the last 12 months was last year's Hall of Fame. So I said, hey, we might as well we might as well do it this year, and we both have some free time. If you're listening to this and you thought we were having a light week, well, surprise, we're not. There you go. There you go. Let's start. I just wanted to go over real quick just a few things. So, did you get a ballot from Dave, or did you get a ballot? You only got my ballot.
No, I got the one from you. No,
Okay.
I didn't get anything from Dove.
People know I've been with the Observer since the start, or the Hall of Fame since the start. I voted on every year since, even when I wasn't even involved in wrestling or watching wrestling. Dave still sent me. I guess I'm on that ballot list or email. It's divided into different people in the business, people out of the business, historians, retired wrestlers. There's all kinds of people that vote on this. But it's not like everybody in the world's voting on it kind of thing. He doesn't send everyone a ballot, which is pretty cool. It's He goes on to say longevity is a prime consideration in voting for somebody. And then there's this mathematical bullshit that he does every year. You have to have so many points to get in if you're from United States or Canada. If you're from bumfuck Egypt, then you have to have another source of number of votes and so forth and so on. So just let everybody know this is kind of like what we do on Patreon. We're not formatting anywhere. We're just gonna sit and talk about the Hall of Fame. But we are gonna go over our picks. Let's go over our picks first, and then when we come back from commercial, we'll tell who won, and you can give your thoughts on who won, and I will too. We're gonna start with the historical performers, and you can vote for 6 of them. Did you vote for 6?
I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, I actually did 6 in that category. I think that's the only category I maxed out.
All right, shoot them to me. Who did you vote for?
All right, so in that category, I voted Bob Armstrong,
Mm-hmm.
Junkyard Dog, Pampero Firpo, Mongolian Stomper, the Hart Foundation, and Sputnik Monroe.
Yeah, anybody, I don't see why any of those people wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Mine's a little bit different. I voted for the Samoans.
Mm-hmm.
We went with Bob Armstrong, both of us. I'm still, and two of the names I vote for every year in this category, and they've never made it yet, is Junkyard Dog and Sputnik Monroe. And I have no idea how those two guys, unless, what do you think? Because Junkyard Dog had just a limited run there, and people remember him as the WWE junk food dog.
That's there's a slew of podcasts every year where all the historian types all go on each other's podcasts and sit and debate this shit for hours. And the main thing I hear people say is just that JYD's actual run where he was in shape and he was over and he had good matches in people's opinion, only was a very small window of time. What, 4 years, 5 years at
Right,
best?
right.
Other people say, God dang, if anybody dumped all over JYD, it was Meltzer, like you say, the junk food dog and all that shit. So, I just think that his time, even if it was short lived, the time he spent on top in Louisiana and the Mid-South, every wrestler I've ever talked to, anybody who lived down there, anybody who witnessed it, said you have not experienced what somebody being over means unless you were there in the Superdome or one of these places where JYD walked out. And the money he drew there, as over as he was, I still think he deserves it, even if it wasn't a long period of time. But I
Right,
guess
right.
others
Well,
feel differently.
I'm one of those guys too. I'm a huge JYD fan, and the thing about it is, I've been voting, like I said, in this since the start, and I really vote for I don't know, vote for your heart kind of thing, or vote for the people that I like
Yeah.
and that influenced me. Now JY was close. He needed he was the eighth person. Wait, 6, 7, 8, 10th person, highest votes, 10th person this year. So he was close, but still not. He was having to get 200 and something votes. He only got 100 and I mean 239. He had to have, if I'm reading this right, 243. So yeah, he was close this year, but I hate it. I hate it because I believe he's one of those guys. Bob Armstrong, I think, because he was so, and I hate to say this because we're both in the South, but so Southern that people didn't know.
Yeah.
And that might be, Sputnik Monroe may be the reason why Sputnik was never voted in.
I think so. I think it's just people who are voting now maybe don't understand how important he was, both to the business and the effect he had outside the business, which I think definitely makes him a Hall of Famer, even if you thought his wrestling was mediocre or you didn't think he covered enough territories or whatever. But the huge impact he had on Memphis as a town, not just wrestling, is something that should be considered. But
I agree.
apparently not.
Yeah, and apparently I actually voted for the Iron Sheik and Kevin Carey and David Von Erich for my last couple Iron Sheik, I guess, because all I can think about is the Hogan thing and the whole run there, and also with Kevin Carey and David Von Erich. I don't know, when it comes to Dallas wrestling, that's the three guys you always think about, and how influential they were in that area and but they were just over in that small, place,
Yeah.
that geographical location. But to hear people talk about that, Brandon Baxter would tell you how it felt when the Von Erichs came out. It was just like rock stars.
Well, it's crazy because as far as where you can take actual attendance numbers and ticket amounts and all that, okay, Kevin and David aren't proven outside of Texas, just Carey, but that TV was so powerful. They were all over the country and to an extent all over the world, but it's kind of hard to prove it because there's no houses to back that up.
Right. You're right about that because people knew who they were. And that show was, man, when it's on Jonesboro Channel 8, that kind of tells you how many stations it actually was on. So, and before it or after it, I can't never remember. I think it was after it or before it was Star Trek. So, and you're talking about a show that was syndicated, everywhere also. So it kind of was in that same, had that same prestige, which I can't talk today, prestige as a Star Trek or and when it came to syndication. So yeah, you're right. I never thought about it that way. All right, the next category, we could vote for 6 people. It was modern performers in United States and Canada. I will tell you my rule on this is it's called the AJ Styles rule. AJ says he don't want to be voted into Hall of Fame if he's currently active as a wrestler. and I feel the same way. I don't ever vote on anyone that's active. But who did you get, and how many people did you get?
I only did 3 on this one, and honestly, there's more I could have done, but I feel very strongly like you do about not putting in people who are active, and I also feel like there's almost needs to be a little bit of a window of time in between when they stop wrestling and when they go in a Hall of Fame. That may be a whole different story for you. I don't
No, I
know,
do.
but
I believe that too. I think there should be 2 or 3 years there, 5 years, because, and you know why I think that is because wrestlers don't retire.
yeah, you don't know when
So
they're going to pop back up.
yeah, you don't know, and you know we had some modern day people get into the Hall of Fame. We're going to talk about that after the commercial break, but I just can't vote on them if they're currently on a roster and they're on live pay per views right now. So I just can't do it. So all right, who did you vote for?
I'll name off who I voted for after you tell who you voted for. There's a couple here that I'll talk about briefly about why I think they deserve to be in and why I didn't vote for them here necessarily. But I guess there's probably no mystery to who my first one is. Of course, Bill Dundee. I feel definitely should be in there because I know a lot of people go, well, but he was only known in Memphis. Well, he was a huge star in Memphis, and he famously went to Mid-South as a booker and lit that territory up and really led it to its biggest financial boom of the entire run of the promotion. Uh, I think he deserves to be in there for a variety of
I
reasons.
voted for him too. I only voted for 4, but Bill was one of them, and everything you said, I agree 100% with. So yeah.
I've seen a lot of people debating this one on different things and during the voting time, but I did vote for Sabu because I think he influenced a whole generation of wrestlers. And as much as people talk about, Japanese wrestling and wrestling from Mexico and everything influencing the high flying style, let's be honest, uh, Sabu not only influenced the high flyers of the next generation, but also the hey Devon, get the tables and all the hardcore stuff. So he had a big, huge influence on the business, on people in the business, fans. He drew, that style drew in fans. So I do think he deserves to be there, even though I wasn't the biggest fan of Terry Bronk, the human being. Sabu deserves to be there, in my opinion. And last but not least, the team that was my absolute favorite tag team in the 90s, Rick and Scott Steiner.
We had the same picks, except I did 4, but I built on D Sabu mainly because, well, I think he got in and, he was there, but I think he got in mainly, we saw his death and that does a lot for the person, but
Yeah.
he deserved it. I'm like you. He was the innovator in the sense that, and I the best way to put this sometimes is that he kind of made garbage wrestling a big deal, and everybody expected his matches to do certain things, and then everybody behind him wanted to go through a table, like you said, 3D. Everybody wanted to do everything that Sabu did, and if you saw him walking around in the
Yeah.
dressing room. Uh, there's no telling what he did to his body. There's that famous barbed wire where he tapes his arm up after he slices his bicep in
Yeah.
half, kind of, and just one of those guys who, to me, like you, has to be part of the Hall of Fame, especially with all the stuff, with ECW. And if you think about that, Rick and Scott Steiner also. I mean, what else can you say about those two guys? And like you said, one of my favorite tag teams also, and was a big deal in Japan and the United States. And the other team that I put in was Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. And the reason why was mainly because, of when they went over to WCW, what happened for that and what happened, the weeks after it, kind of thing. But yeah, that was my picks.
We almost had the exact same ones. I labored over that one for a while because I was a big fan of Hall and Nash. And like you say, what they did kicked off the NWO, which is one of the biggest angles ever. Put WCW in a position to being, the top promotion for 83 weeks, as Bischoff talks about, and it all starts with them. So I marked it down and then I took it back off a couple of different times, and I definitely would vote for them in the future. And there's a ton of people here. I almost voted for Trish Stratus, but I'm just not that big of a women's wrestler guy. But if you are, I think she may be somebody who deserves to be there. But most of these other people you see here, the Punks and the Codys and the Ortons and the Rollins and all those, it's no, not when they're still as active as they are. Why? And Bill Goldberg's on here. If Bill Goldberg gets in the Hall of Fame, this whole thing's tainted as far as I'm concerned. But that's a whole other podcast.
Hey, you're a Bill Goldberg hater, aren't you? Yes, you
Yes,
are.
I certainly am.
Think about it is with, and I say 100 times with Goldberg. I think it's one of those things. It's personal. Do you think this guy in his short run deserved to be in Hall of Fame? And they haven't put him in there yet. So, all right. So the next one is the Japan candidates. There's 3 maximum. Did you vote for anyone there?
I voted for one because I'm not one of these Japanese wrestling haters, but I'm not
Right.
a historian of it or even a follower in the last few. So the only one here that stood out to me that I thought that I know who he is, I've seen his matches, and I think he deserves to be there is Hayabusa.
Yeah, and he got close this year. He really did. He was one of those. Junkyard Dog was right behind him. He was very close to getting. I voted for the team of Toyota and Yamada, girl tag team that I watched a bunch of the girls wrestling back in the day. The Crush Girls and Aja Kong and Dump Masamuto, all that stuff. And these girls always put out and was work wise. I don't know about the other thing, but they were always fun to watch, innovative, and if anyone deserves to be in some kind of a Hall of Fame for Japanese, these 2 girls end up. And I think it's the only 2 girls I voted for the whole Hall of Fame. So I'm not a huge, like you said, women's wrestling fan, but my women's wrestling love goes back to these girls, the Crush Girls and the girls I just mentioned, and what was going on with everything with these girls. So,
If you're going to vote for Yamada, you got to vote for Yafada too. So,
don't get it. Look, no.
no,
Followed wrestling in Mexico candidates. I did not vote for anyone here because I didn't really see anyone that I remember. I did watch AAA and CMLL on the dish, and I have a little bit of history with the Mexico candidates, but none of them that really stood out to me.
there's probably 4 names here that I even recognize, and beyond that, I couldn't pick them out of the lineup probably. So I didn't vote for anybody for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, there's no sense in European, Australia, New Zealand, Pacific Island, and Africa, 4 maximum. Did you vote for anybody?
I voted for one, and you can
All right.
I'll give you one guess on who that is.
Adrian Street.
There you go. That was it.
I vote for him every year, Gene. He is. I think if you go back and you listen to every episode, it'll be JYD and Adrian Street will be on there. Otto Vance also is always on the list because of what he did, in his country. And made tons of money, but I don't. And I think the only reason I don't vote for him is that the aftermags used to put him over so much. And then all the results were always in those gimmick books at the Memphis table. They had results from over there, and a lot of the guys went over there and worked, and they had a season of matches, which was really different. And I also Danucci. I voted for Dominic Danucci because the influence not only wrestling was, but of the people that were trained by him afterwards. But that was the 3 that I voted for. All right, I know this one's going to be interesting, and we probably have some of the same votes on this one. I always get my 7 maximum on the non-wrestlers because I think they're kind of overlooked sometimes. But go ahead, how many did you vote for?
I voted for 4, and and honestly, I could have voted for a few others, but the ones I did vote for, obviously, I voted for Dave Brown.
Yep.
I voted for Bob Caudle, who, rest his soul, passed away over the weekend. I voted for Gorilla Monsoon, who I don't know how he's not in there as an announcer and as a wrestler. And last but not least, I voted for Jesse Ventura.
Oh wow, yeah, that's we're different on this one. So it's really I voted for Dave Brown, Reggie Parks. I thought he had a lot of influence.
Yeah.
Maybe not as a wrestler, but designing championship belts. Mike Tenay, a short run in the business, but I think he deserves. But he was was the announcer when it came to TNA.
Oh, yeah.
I voted for Jesse, as you did. Ted Turner, who influenced the business a lot, and I don't know why he's not there. A couple other picks, one being Roy Welch because of the area. I always vote for Roy, thinking, this area was influenced mainly by the Welches and such. And Stanley Weston, who is famous for the Aftermags,
Right.
his company, and was a main part of my childhood. And one of those people that I think, and same thing goes for Dave Brown, that I feel belongs because I always say to people, there's always a role for you in professional wrestling. And, these non-wrestlers were real, especially Dave. He's got a longevity of being on all the shows except maybe one. And then also just being so much part of Memphis wrestling history.
Yeah. I definitely think he deserves to be there, but I also understand for all the people who weren't exposed to Memphis, who don't understand that history. I can get that he doesn't make it in for that reason. And there's some other people, Larry Madisick, but again, if you're not in the St. Louis area, you don't really, have any point of reference on him. I agree with Roy Welch. Stanley Weston I agree with too. Some people would make a case for Grand Wizard, but to me, that's just like Grand Wizard don't mean as much to us down here as he does to them up there, just like Dave Brown to us down here. So it's kind of just a regional thing at the end of the day. And of course, if you're in Texas, I'm sure you're voting for Bill Mercer, but I don't know. Those were the four that I was like, all right, I definitely want to vote for them. At some point, I would vote for Schiavone, but Schiavone's famously said he didn't want any Hall of Fame prior to Bob Caudle. Right. That's who he grew up on. So I was like, all right, well, we'll vote for Bob Caudle and we'll see what happens next year.
There you go.
Now, and another thing I was wondering, Kevin Sullivan. Now, is that the Kevin Sullivan we all know that wrestled, or is this other Kevin Sullivan who's the backstage guy? That's what I assumed.
The guy that did all the videos and was it TNA first? Yeah, he did a bunch of stuff for TNA. Yeah. I'm not saying it's just one of those guys I probably would never vote for because of even though I think he really did set the bar when it came to, and you saw even WWE change some of the stuff that they're doing. And if you look at some of the new WWE videos, you still kind of see his influence on those videos, that low talk and that, kind of presenting it as the product as legit as possible. And he did that. He made you think that those matches meant something. So,
if you consider the production part of it, Jim Johnston probably deserves to be in there because he's kind of the first guy to create, specific music for wrestlers that they owned. Right before Jim Johnston come along, we're still just using licensed music and crossing our fingers that we get away with it. So that was a big turning point in the business. But
I didn't vote for him. So yeah. All right, we're going to go to a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk halftime.
Don't miss Memphis Wrestling Live. Sunday, November 23rd, Jerry the King Lawler is coming to Memphis Wrestling. Meet the King at our VIP experience, plus Santa Claus is coming to town. Monday and Tuesday, November 24th and 25th, Memphis Wrestling's Kids Camp returns for Thanksgiving break. Register now. Sunday, December 14th, it's our annual Grind City Rumble featuring the Good Brothers, Gallows, and Anderson, along with TNA's Hometown Maine. And be on the lookout for our 2026 schedule. All tickets are on sale now. Get yours right now at memphiswrestling.tv.
Wrestling fans, are you ready? Every Friday night in Osceola, Arkansas, MCW, the legacy continues. Live, hard-hitting, family-friendly wrestling action every Friday night at the MCW Arena, located at 1098 West Kaiser. Doors open at 6:30 and the action starts at 8 p.m. sharp. Don't miss your chance to see the stars of MCW ballot out in the ring, rivals, drama, and slam-packed action. Here's what I want you to do. If you have any questions, I want you to search Facebook for Osceola's Mid-Southern Championship Wrestling. All ticket information, how to get your ticket, what time the show starts, everything right there on Facebook. All tickets are on sale right now. Be there!
Try to break the street, it's a no-go. It's a no, you ain't know I'm a pro. They couldn't keep us out the building, the time of legend. And now I'm talking to a future.
Relive the glory days of Memphis wrestling with the Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast. Each week, we go back in time to review USWA Championship Wrestling from the 1990s, episode by episode. Join us for watch-alongs, behind-the-scenes stories, and exclusive interviews with people who were there and lived it. Whether you grew up watching it or you're discovering it for the first time, this podcast is your ringside seat to Memphis wrestling history. It's all a part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Listen now at USWApodcast.com.
All right, back from commercial, and it's time for halftime. All right, halftime. I want to thank everyone for joining us here on a Tuesday afternoon. I forgot to mention that yesterday, the Observer Hall of Fame issue came out officially on Monday, and we're doing this show on Tuesday. Gene, that's what unemployment will do for you. Can you believe that?
It is. That way people don't have to make fun of us because we're talking about stuff that happened 6 weeks ago.
There you go. And here we go. So I'm just going to kind of wing it here, but we had talked about a few of the people that did not make it this year that kind of was at the bottom of the top 10. Is there anybody there? You said Gorilla Monsoon. You feel like you're so surprised that we're not seeing him in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, Gorilla Monsoon was the lead announcer through that, huge period of explosion of the WWF. He was, part owner of the company. He was, one of the last links to, Vincent J. McMahon all the way up until his passing. And, what was it, 96 or 7, whenever, right in there. So, I mean, his behind the scenes for the non-wrestler category, he deserves to be in for that, I think. Not to mention, on the wrestler side of things, the extensive feud he had with Bruno Sammartino and all the money they drew and all the titles he held. I just don't see how, either as a wrestler or as a non-wrestler, how Gorilla Monsoon has not made it in by 2025.
And, we talked about JYD, which is always a surprise to me, but then both of us go back to the fact that, hey, we do kind of get that you didn't see the JYD that we seen, and we kind of understand that, but you got a guy also like Jesse Ventura, Gorilla Monsoon, the Von Erichs. How do these guys don't get enough votes is what, I mean, it's really crazy. Such a history in the business that we don't see them with votes and being in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a strange thing. Both, the Observer Hall of Fame, the WWE Hall of Fame, a lot of the Hall of Fames, when you look at the list of people who are in, and then some of the glaring omissions that, for whatever reason, people just haven't voted in over the years, you just scratch your head and wonder, like, all right, well, what was your reasoning behind voting some of the people in that's been voted in and these people still not being in there? I mean, the Von Erichs were considered important enough. They made a mainstream movie that I went and watched in a movie theater, and they're not important enough to be in the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame. I'm not going to pick anybody by pointing out anybody who is, because whoever's in there, they got enough votes to be there. It's not like Dave's just arbitrarily picking these people. But I do think some of these folks that his reviews over the years weigh into, like, it's almost like I don't think people want to send in a vote for some of these people to Dave because he's made so much fun of them at different times. And I think JYD tops that list, and Monsoon's a victim of that as well.
Might be. And also just, I think, I've talked about the influence that I think Meltzer had on me as a fan. I think it also still has, when we talked about it on other shows about, the readership now is not us. I mean,
Right.
we're not that demographic because we're not hardcore sicko AEW fans. We're not, and the thing about it is, and I don't know where I was going with this. Oh, the way he influenced, I think the people that read the Observer, hardcore read the Observer every line like they do, still do. When he goes over who he thinks should be in the Hall of Fame, they're influenced by that. And I'm going to mention somebody, and I may be totally wrong when we go into this Hall of Fame thing here with the winners, but some of these people, I don't even know who they are, and I don't think no one else reading Observer knows who they are if Dave wouldn't have spent time either on his show talking about them or writing a large piece in the Observer about the person.
Oh, that's a great point. I have to agree, unless there's some other means that people are partaking of these folks that we're not privy to. But even though we don't watch everything and we don't follow everything, we're both pretty knowledgeable of what's out there and the means for people to get out there. So, some of these people, I agree with you that's their only exposure is what Dave's writing and saying about them. They're not seeing these folks. They're not coming to this conclusion of their own.
They don't. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but it is one of those things where I vote for people, and I've been, if I was fans of them, I saw them, I know who they were, I know what they did, and a lot of people don't do that. And I think, I just, for example, I used to, if the match was 4 stars in the Observer, I would try to go out of my way to watch that match. Yeah. I don't do that anymore, but just that little influence that he does, that probably, and we're going to go after this, we're going to go right into who was voted. And it was kind of a surprise with some people because I didn't know who the hell they were. And I consider myself knowing who a lot of the history of the business. So, all right, guys, that was halftime. Y'all, Gene does not want to compete with the dancing machine, BT Express. Just tell him that, Gene. Tell him.
I'll tell you like I tell my wife, I'm not a dancer. I don't dance.
All right, so let's look at the class of 2025. And the first guy here that seemed to have got the most votes was Sapiros Arion. And do you know who the hell that is, Gene?
I mean, I can't claim to know much about him. I know Spiros Arion's name, and I've heard of him, but I don't know his history or anything like that to speak on him, to be honest.
And I think this was one of those guys that Dave kept putting over, and he even made a mention that they've done extra research on him in the last couple of years. He had a hell of a run with Bruno Sammartino, but who didn't have a hell of a run with Bruno Sammartino? And he got voted in. First time I remember seeing a name occasionally, but it wasn't somebody on my radar at all.
Right.
Grand, and I'm going to be Southern here. I want to call him Hamada, but it's Hamada, right?
Yeah.
So don't know much about him either, even though, I've seen the name a million times. It wouldn't be someone that I voted for.
No, again, that's a name I've heard. It's somebody's name I've seen pop up, but when you compare it to names on the list that we've gone over that didn't get in, and now, you know what? we got this time on our hands, like you pointed out. Who's to say I might not take some of these names that I don't know that we're going to talk about today and do some studying on them and see if I can't smart myself up and learn a little more about them. Maybe they did have longevity. Maybe they didn't do as big of things as, like, say, a JYD, but they did mediocre things for a long period of time or something. So it may be kind of a pet project maybe we can take on, maybe you or I or a little bit of both of us look into some of these people and maybe come back on a Patreon podcast, or I may write one of these articles about them sometime. And maybe it's just our ignorance. I don't know. We're not, like you said, we're not saying these people don't deserve to be in. We're just saying we can't really speak on them because we're not,
Right. I mean, the thing about it is, I mean, there's some guys we're just never going to have a chance to see. And some of these guys have been in the 50s. And so third person, Dorrell Dixon, who, by my research, was the first main event black wrestler in Mexico and apparently drew lots of great gates back in the day, but also someone that was not at all on my radar. And I don't know how people found this guy's name unless it was just because of this, section of people that read the Observer.
Yeah. And it may be people that read, some of the historical books that guys like Scott Teal have put out and things like that. Because I do want to say on our behalf, because there may be some old guys sitting there listening to this right now cussing, just like, we spoke on, and you said this, the direct quote almost was, people who are not voting Junkyard Dog in are people who weren't around for his heyday that don't know what we know or see, didn't see what we saw. Maybe there's people out there going, "Oh, Grant Hamada, you don't know what the hell you're talking about," So he may have been the greatest thing in the world, and we're just ignorant to it because it was, like you said, it was in the 50s or the 60s or even the early 70s. So, if that's true about the guy you just said though about that, then okay, great. He should probably be in, and probably should be in before JYD because he did it a long time before. But
right, you guys, smarten us up. But
you would have to know that by age because we do more than our fair share of studying wrestling and have for most of our lives. So for him to not be on our radar at all means you would have to sought him out. And most people who will be old enough to remember these three guys you just said on the beginning of the list, they're not on the internet now. They're not actively on the internet where, they're going to be voting and participating like we do. So I'm not making excuses for us. I'm just, pointing that out.
Yeah, he has a hell of a story in the sense that, he being the Dorrell Dixon, being the first main event Mexican guy, but he was a PE teacher, went into Mexico City, and all of a sudden he was, he's also weightlifting, competed in weightlifting and stuff like that. So, probably had the body. I get it, but like I said, I'm just surprised about names that get not names on the ballot, but mainly names that get voted in where I'm going, kind of thing. The next two people are current wrestlers, CM Punk and Cody Rhodes, and there is no way I would, not vote them into the Hall of Fame. But it also goes by, the AJ Styles rule. They're currently on the roster, main event and pay-per-views, and so I didn't vote for them. But I assume you would probably vote for them after they retire, right?
Oh, yeah. They're both Hall of Famers after they retire. But come on, putting in guys that are currently active that were on, Raw last night over guys like JYD, Gorilla Monsoon, or anybody else you can list who wrestled all those years ago, that just feels crazy to me.
Me too. Sabu, which we both voted for, he had 288 votes, and CM Punk had 294, and Cody had 289. So they were all right there together, which kind of gives you. I mean, even Punk and Rhodes being on TV all the time, Sabu jumped in there with them. And I think Punk and Rhodes being on TV and Dave making it okay to vote for those people is the reason that, that some of the major stars that are currently wrestling get in. But I just can't do it. And the final person was Bobby Bruins. had you ever heard of this guy?
Do you mean Bobby Bronze, the guy from Power Pro?
How did you know
That a
I missed it?
typo? Well, it's
Yeah.
about time that somebody from Power Pro got in the Hall of Fame, Brian. Son of a bitch.
I started my own Hall of Fame.
That's right.
Very, 1950s Japan, all kinds of stuff that neither one of us, I mean, I'm much older than you, but damn, I mean, I never heard of this guy, never seen him. Maybe we should take of the people we've never seen in this list, and like you said, do a deep dive on them. I don't even know if it's worth it. But I'd like to see some stuff. I guess the only, stuff I've seen, with WWE would be some of the, Spiros was there, but I only remember very little of it. So it's not nothing that I was part of.
Those other guys, I've heard the names, but I wasn't familiar with them, but I've at least read and heard their names. That last one, Bobby Bruns, I've never in my life seen, read, or heard of that name until he popped up on this list. So
true. And Dorell Dixon, I had never heard of.
I had even heard mention of him. There's a gentleman. Oh my gosh, his name escapes me. But he's a really good writer, and it's a black gentleman who's been writing some books about African American wrestlers. And I've read one of his books. I've heard him on a number of podcasts. I can't believe I can't think of his name right now. But I've heard him talk about him on some podcasts.
Okay. Well, that's where I'm out of the loop, I guess, when it comes to stuff like that. But as always, it's so fun to look at what the Observer Hall of Fame. I don't know, it's going to be, like we said, influenced by it's a certain amount of people. Even though so many people read Observer now, there's only a certain amount of people voting. It's only going to be, but it's, whether it's better than the WWE Hall of Fame, which I guess it could be better. Because we see a bunch of other names, and we do have, but the Hall of Fame for WWE is all about a spectacle. So you can argue, like you said, there'll be a bunch of people arguing who got voted in and why and all that shit for the next few weeks. But hey, maybe we're the first because it was officially yesterday, and we're talking about it today. All right, Gene, you want to put over anything before we get out of here?
Oh, well, let's see. We've got the Retro Wrestling Review podcast, the USWA version that you're a part of each and every week now, along with our good friend Josh Briley. You can find it at uswapodcast.com. I've also got the substack.com/retro wrestling archive, where you can find articles plus all the audio podcasts come through there. Now you can go to Linktree/Retro Wrestling Archive, and links to all this stuff that I'm mentioning is going to pop up there. We've got the Retro Wrestling Review CWA podcast that you and I are doing now. That's exclusive to Patreon. That we are covering. We just started CWA 1987, and those drop every other Saturday at 11 a.m., just like the Memphis Wrestling Show did back in the day.
Love it.
Started this past Saturday, and so you can be looking for that every other Saturday. We've got me and Bob Anderson are about to start the Retro Wrestling Review WCW podcast, where we're starting in 1989, watching all the clashes and pay-per-views, and then I'll be putting out articles filling in the news and notes from throughout the year. Plus, on both of our Patreons, we got a lot of cool stuff like watch-alongs and a ton of great content, especially now that we're tag teaming this thing, or we're making content for both. So I hope everybody checks that out over at patreon.com/retro wrestling archive for me. And of course, for you, they can check out your link of all links where all that's available.
Yeah,
to be found.
Everything's right there. Just a little bit different on my Patreon is that we do all the Memphis Wrestling stuff. So if you're currently watching the current Memphis Wrestling with Jerry Lawler coming up for the Christmas special, We do a lot of we do Shooting Star, which is like an inside look at the business that is only on Patreon, on members only on Memphis Wrestling, and everything with Gene. We have a fun time putting out. I've had such a fun time with the old Memphis shows, and not thinking, I wasn't that guy that said, "Oh, this is going to do a good job." And then when y'all got started, you and Josh and Richard got started, and I was watching and following along. I was like, damn, I wish I would have jumped in on this. And man, I didn't know that eventually I would jump in for it. So it's been a fun ride. This season's really fun. 1991 with Eric Emery. We, up until right now, we say he's got a bad rap. So we're almost into May, and it's been very, very interesting. All right. Thanks, man. Thanks, Gene. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Same bad time, same bad channel on the best little wrestling podcast in the business. Be there. And as everyone knows, Gene knows this, I love my mama.
He really does.